Good morning, friends. Welcome to Ramsudhis IAS Academy. We are back with a new video on percentages. Percentage part 2. Because the previous video ended abruptly, we are with this part 2. We'll start our discussion. Now, the same question can also be solved on some other lines. Just let me explain you the problem. Now, 100, 10% is a decrease in price. I mean, price fall is by 10%, and to maintain the expenditure constant, if at all the housewife tries to maintain the expenditure, by how much should she increase her rice consumption? Consumption of rice. 10% decrease minus, okay, 10% decrease, and therefore 10% would be minus 1 by 10, and it would be minus because it is decrease, and therefore 9 by 10, she should increase her production. Sorry, this is not 9 by 10, this is 1 by 9, sorry, 1 by 9, because the numerator 1 is same and denominator is 10 minus 1, 9. And this is, she should increase her consumption of rice by 1 by 9, which is 1 by 9 into 100%. We will not worry about this, what this 100%, what this value is. We are just concerned with, she should increase her consumption of rice by 1 by 9. And this is what I have written over here, 1 by 9. I have written it through some other method, and you just need not confuse. You can also go with these steps, okay? Yeah, 1 by 9. She should increase her consumption by 1 by 9. By this 1 by 9, what do we mean is, like, a number is increased by 1 by 10%. What does it mean? 10, if at all 10 is the number, it is increased by 1. Therefore, the new number is 11. That is the meaning of a number increased by 10% or 1 by 10. And in the same case, a number is increased by 1 by 9 means the original number is 9, and if it is increased by 1 to give it 10. And this is, this is the meaning of this fraction. Now, 9 is the original consumption of rice, and to maintain her expenditure constant, the housewife should increase her consumption by 1 unit. Therefore, this 1 unit is given in the question as 1 kg, because he is able to buy 1 kg more for the same price. Therefore, this 1 unit is 1 kg, and 9 units would be 9 kgs. So, original consumption was 9 kg, and the new consumption, because of decrease in price, is 10 kg. But the question is asking for us the reduction in price. Now, for 270 rupees, originally he used to obtain 9 kgs, which means price for 1 kg of rice is 30 rupees, 270 by 9, 30 rupees. And now, after the price fall, he is able to obtain 10 kgs of rice for the same 270 rupees. Therefore, the 1 kg of rice would be 27 rupees. Therefore, reduction in price is 3 rupees. That's my solution. I think this method is better than the previous one, and it is up to you. Whichever method you have find it suitable, you can use that method. I would go with this method, because just 10% price fall, and the housewife would increase her consumption by 1 by 9, and from there it should be easy. 9 is the original consumption, and 1 is the consumption rice, and 9 is the consumption, 1 is the consumption rice, and luckily we have our 1 unit. Our 1 unit assumed is equals to 1 kg over here. Therefore, our original consumption is 9 kgs, and our new consumption is 10 kgs. From there, I'll find the values per kg of rice and calculate my reduction in price. Moving on to the next question. Excuse me. Raju spends 40% of his salary on rent, 10% of the remaining. Friends, here the remaining is the phrase you need to keep in mind. There are certain questions where where you'll be given Raju spends 40% of his salary on rent, 10% on travel, and all. In those cases, you can just sum up 40, 10, and then 16.2 by 16 2 by 3. These are all his expenditure, and savings would be 100 minus this, and then equate it to the sum given over here, 2250. But that is not the case over here. The case here is entirely different. Here it is remaining amount of this 40. The remaining amount is 60%. Of this 60, he had spent 10% on travel, and after removing this 10% from this 60%, he had kept 16 2 by 3% of the remaining. Like after consuming 10% from the 60%, the remaining has 16 2 by 3% of the remaining has been kept on food, and then the remaining amount is 2250. This is different, entirely different case from this. Therefore, I'll just start solving my problem. Let his salary be X, and he spent 40% on rent, and the remaining would be 60%. Therefore, I have taken it to be 60 by 100. And of the remaining, this is remaining with him presently, my friends. because 40% he had already kept it on rent, and this is the remaining value I have taken over here. This is the remaining amount, and of the remaining 10% he kept on travel, he spent on travel, and because 10% is spent on travel, 90 by 100 is remaining, 90% is still remaining with him, and 90% is remaining after keeping 40%, after spending 40% on rent and 10% on travel, and this is the remaining amount after spending on rent and travel. And next, 16 2 by 3%, which is 1 by 6 from our first slide, has been spent on food, and therefore I have written it to be 1 by 6 is spent on food, and the remaining would be 5 by 6. So I have kept and directly written it 5 by 6 over here. This is not 2, this is okay. Just let me remove this. So 5 by 6 is kept over here. And this is remaining amount after spending 40% on rent, 10% of the remaining on travel, and 16 2 by 3% of the remaining on food. This is what we have obtained, and this is our remaining sum. And this remaining sum is 2,250, which he has saved. Now, from this formula, it should be easy for us to calculate x therefore, which is 5,000 rupees. And this question asked is not about x, the question asked is about the amount spent on food. Like the amount spent on food is this 1 by 6 of the remaining. Like this 1 by 6 and the sum remaining after here. Now, after here, the sum remaining is just till here, and therefore x into 60 by 100, I have written it as 3 by 5. After spending 40% on rent, 3 by 5 is remaining over here, and after spending 10% of the remaining on travel, 9 by 10 is remaining over here, and this is the remaining amount before he had spent on food, and therefore amount spent on food is 1 by 6. Here I have taken 1 by 6 instead of 5 by 6 because he is asking us to find the amount spent on food. 5 by 6 would yield us amount remaining after spent on food, but 1 by 6 would yield us amount spent on food, and therefore 1 by 6 over here, which would give our answer to be 450 rupees, which is our answer. Now, if not like this, we can also solve this problem on another lines. If it is easy, just go with this, and if you find it difficult or confusing, or if you find the method I am going to explain easy, you can use that method too. Now, I'll assume it to be 100 units, his total salary to be 100 units. He spent 40% of his salary on rent. 40% he spent that on rent, and the remaining is 60 units. And of these 60 units, 10% is of the remaining, which is 60, is spent on travel. So 60 into 1 by 10, 10% is 1 by 10, and therefore 60 units is spent on what is it? Travel. Yeah, 62 units is spent on travel. Of this, the remaining is 54. Of the 60, 6 is spent on travel, and therefore the remaining is 54. Of this 54, 16 2 by 3% is spent on food, and 16 2 by 3 is 1 by 6, and therefore of 54, 6169, 9 units is spent on food, and the remaining amount is 45. 54 minus 9, which is 45, and this 45 is the remaining sum which he had saved, which is equal to 2,250, and he is asking us to find the amount spent on food. Amount spent on food is 9 rupees. Our 45, as our assumption, 45 units is 2,250 given in the question, and now our assumption 9 units would be some x. After cross multiplying, my x would be somewhere around 450. Sorry. Yeah. My x would be 450 after cross, no, sorry, not this one. Yes, my x would be 450 rupees after cross multiply. Yep. You have the procedure over here. Now moving on to the next question. I think even this method is clear with you. Whichever method is clear, I mean, you are perfect. You find it easy, either the previous one or this one. You can go with any of these steps. These are just interpretations in different terms. It is not a trick, it is just interpretations in different terms. So whichever interpretation you find it easy, you can solve the problem. Now next, a village lost 12% of its goats in a flood, and 5% of the remainder, the same question, a similar question, not the same question, just the terms are changed, similar question. 5% remainder died from diseases, and the number left now is 8,360. Original number of, the number of goats died by flood. Now, the original number, I'll suppose it to be x. Of 12% died in a flood, and therefore 88% are remaining, and therefore 88 by 100. And 5% of the remainder died from diseases. 5% of the remainder, 5% died through diseases, and the remainder is 95 by 100. Or after having died by diseases and flood, the remainder is 8,360, and this is my remainder, which is equal to 8,360. On solving this, my x would be 10,000, which is 10,000 goats. Goats is the units here, and therefore 10,000 units would be my x. The question asked is the number of goats died by floods. Here, floods, 12% died through floods, 12% directly died through floods, and therefore 10,000 is my goats, and 10,000 into 12 by 100, 12% died from floods, and therefore 12 by 100, therefore my answer would be 1200 goats. And I'll just assign you a small task. Find the number of goats died from diseases. I think you should get the answer. The number of goats died from diseases, because of the remaining, yeah, after 1200 died from what they say, floods, the what percent, 5% also died from diseases, and therefore just calculate the number of goat died through diseases. Yep. Or this question can also be solved like the previous question. I took it to be 100 units and all. This question also can be solved on similar lines. But here I am ending up with some fractions. Here I had whole numbers and therefore that was no problem. But here I am ending up with some fractions which would complicate my solution rather than simplifying it, and therefore I have just left it till there. You can go with this method. This method can also be done just if you are okay with fractions, you can just proceed, and the fractions would just complicate the problem, and therefore I'm leaving it over here. Now moving on to the next question. An army lost 10% of its men in war and 10% of remaining due to diseases. A question on similar lines. 10% of the remaining due to diseases, 10% of the remaining were declared disabled. Strength of the army was reduced to 7,29,000 active men. Original strength was, what is the original strength? Here, on similar lines, I assume it to be X, and 10% died in war, and therefore the remaining is 90 by 100, and 10% died through diseases, and the remaining is 90 by 100, and 10% have been disabled, therefore the remaining is 90 by 100. Therefore, the question gives me the active men to be 7,29,000, and this is my active men from my assumption, and therefore X would turn out to be 10 lakhs, therefore 10 lakhs was the original strength. The similar question can be solved in different way, like I have solved this question using taking 100 units, the similar question I will be solving using 100 units, but here in the third step I ended with a fraction, like 729 by 10 was my answer, I mean here 81 by 10, I subtracted it, and 72.9. This is somewhat decimals or fractions, and this would just complicate my problems. Because 72.9 and 729, they would get cancelled, I just proceeded with my answer. But if at all it was something around 74.9 or something, this would definitely complicate our solution, and therefore just make sure whenever there are only whole numbers, go through such steps. And I mean, when you're writing such steps, if you only yield whole numbers in this side, either this side or this side, just move ahead with solving your problem. If not, just stop the method and just go with this previous method. This method is also easy. Yep. Moving on to the next question. A man spends 75%. We are done with questions of this sort, remaining of the remaining and all. We are done with those questions. We have already discussed 3 to 4 questions of the similar sort, and therefore you need not get questions. You need not get confused when you get questions of that sort in the examination. You should be perfectly okay. Now moving on to the next question. A man spends 75% of his income. I mean, his expenditure is 75%. And if his income increased by 20%, his expenditure also increases by 10%. Find percentage increase in his savings. Now, this should be the convention for such problems. His income, expenditure, and savings. Then, in the first case, I assume his income to be 100 units, and 75% is his expenditure, and therefore his savings is 25%. And in the second case, 20% increase with respect to his income, and therefore income is 120, and 10% increase with respect to his expenditure. 10%. Why 7.5? Because 10% of 75 is 7.5, and therefore 82.5. Or 75 into 10% increase in expenditure is, sorry my friends, 75 into 10% increase in expenditure is 75 into 11 by 10, which would be 82.5. Either ways, it is 82.5. And therefore, my expenditure, his expenditure in the second case is 82.5, and therefore his savings would be 120 minus 82.5. Sorry, what's happening? 120 minus 82.5, which is 37.5. He is asking us to find out percentage increase in his savings. Percentage increase in his savings means the percentage increase in his savings with respect to his previous savings. His previous savings were 25, and his present saving is 37.5. And with respect to B, and therefore, I mean with respect to, let this be case A and case B. Now therefore, case B minus case A by case A, because it is with respect to first case, into 100. And therefore, sorry my friends, what's happening? Yeah. 37.5 minus 25, which is 12.5 by 25, which is the savings in first case, into 100. Therefore, his savings is increased by 50%. His savings has increased by 25%. Now, moving on to the next question. A man purchased 150 pence at rupees 12 per pen. He sold 50 pence at 10% gain. The percentage gain at which he must sell the remaining pence so as to gain 15% on the whole. Now, you need not get confused over here, my friends. This is a question relating to profit and loss, gain, loss, and all is given, and why I am solving it in a chapter like percentages. I have already told you percentages can be used to solve problems relating to profit and loss. And even then, this doesn't contain any formula or concept relating to profit and loss, and therefore I have solved it over here. Now, he sold 50% at 10% gain. 50 pence at 10% gain, and the remaining 100% should be sold at what percentage profit, so as to yield him 15% profit on the whole. Now 50 pence are sold and the remaining are 100 pence, because it is 150. 50 are sold and 150 are left. These are sold and these are left. And on taking its ratios, it would be 1/2. And on summing the ratios, it would be total 3 ratios. These 3 ratios, and he had asked me to, like 15% should be the overall profit. I would assume this to be 15 directly. So 3 into 15, my total ratios is 3 and the profit should be 15, which is 3 into 15, 45 units should be my profit. But in first case, I have sold the pens at 10. I mean 10% profit, which is 10 units, which is my profits would be just 10 units. Now I have to enhance my second part, the gain in second part, so that the total profit would be 15%. He is asking me to find out what is that enhanced profit percentage. Now this 2 ratios should be sold. Then he had already obtained 10 units profit. The remaining profit he should obtain is 35 units. 45 units. Sorry, it's like I'm thanking you continuously. Yeah. Sorry. Now 35 units is the profit remaining, and the 35 units should be obtained from this ratio 2, and therefore 35, for 2 ratios it is 35 units, for 1 ratio it is 35 by 2, 17.5 units, and therefore the remaining 100 pence should be sold at 17.5% profit, so that the entire profit is 15% in the transaction. I think you are okay with this explanation, and if you have any doubts, I'll discuss a problem on similar lines in some other in some other video pertaining to profit and loss. Make sure you understand that problem over there. Thank you, my friends. This is the end of the video. Thank you.